a video on an update on the cherry gins that I made. So I did 3 cherry gins. I did a sour cherry gin, which is the frozen sour cherries that you buy in the supermarket, and you just simply frost them, drain off the excess juice, and then add them to gin and a bit of sugar. I'll do the recipe in the description. And then I did a fresh cherry gin, which was just gin in it and no sugar. And I found that the gin was pulling all the colour out of the cherries, and I didn't quite like the look of that. So I kind of thought to myself, maybe it was because this one was kind of keeping its colour quite well. I thought maybe it was the sugar, the lack of sugar, that bleached that. So then I did some more with some sugar in to see if it was the sugar, adding sugar would keep the colour, and it doesn't look like it will. That's actually been a problem. They look like they've just, see, that's kind of quite bleached out the colour of that one, and then that's pretty much done the same in that one. So the sugar wasn't kind of the problem. So, and then you look at these, and these have kind of really quite kept the colour. I mean, they're frozen and they're a bit not particularly a particularly good cherry shape, but they've kept the colour. So I don't know why. But anyway, so let's do the taste. This is the one without sugar. We'll taste the gin and then we'll taste the cherries. It's all right. It's all right. It's a bit. I don't think I'd purposely want to drink it. That's all right. It's just a bit sweeter. And then this is the sour cherry one, which is a lovely colour. You see, that's lovely. That's lovely. So, okay, that's kind of quite interesting, isn't it? Which kind of goes with my belief that if we're going to make alcohols or fruit infused alcohols, then we need to use complex flavoured fruit. And complex normally means sour or bitter. If you use something that's too sweet, the sweetness of the fruit kind of doesn't really kind of go into work in any kind of way. Well, because we're going to put sugar in anyway. But sour bitter fruits tend to be more interesting. Think sloe gin for a start. That's a bitter sour, and that's more interesting. Same with damsons. They're sour and bitter. And then you don't make wine out of the grapes, edible grapes. Well, all the grapes are edible, but the ones that you don't eat, you always make grapes from wine grapes that are kind of not very pleasant to eat. So that's kind of interesting. Let's taste the cherries and see what we think. Lost all the flavour, but still taste it. We have that. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, but they have like that texture of an unripe cherry. Okay, that's nicer. That's probably nicer because of the sugar. And then let's have a taste of this. That's quite nice. So cheaper and a better result, and easier. I'd go with the sour cherries, and it tastes more alcoholic as well. That's probably down to the fact that when we defrosted them, we took some of that excess liquid out. Right, so what I'm going to do with these, that's not very nice. Let's not do anything with that. We'll just leave that in the cupboard, and we'll think about that. Okay, so let's turn these into candied cherries, like maraschino kind of cherries. So I've got, these are my favourite cherries to put in cocktails. This Luxardo maraschino cherries. They are delicious in a cocktail. So let's have a go at turning them into something like that. You can buy cheaper versions. These are from Lidl, and these are very nice, and probably a quarter of the price of those. Those are expensive. You can't just buy those anywhere. You have to go to specialist shops or order them online. These just come from Lidl, and it's normally when it's Italian week. But so, what we'll do is I don't want to waste all that cherry alcohol. We're not going to need it all, but we'll see how we go. So, we're not going to need all that cherry gin. So we will make a syrup of the cherry gin and the and some sugar, and then we'll candied those cherries in that. And as we top up, we'll top up with, I've got the cherry juice that I took out of it. I've got in the freezer still, so we'll top up when we need to add a little bit more sugar and a little bit more liquid. We'll add some of that liquid, because I don't want to waste that cherry gin. Although I've got another container of it, but still. And then we'll do the same with that. And as that gin's not as nice, we'll probably use. But we'll see how we go. We'll start the syrup off with gins. We won't use it. We won't need to use it all. And then, so what I'll do is I'll do a calculation of what's the weight of the fruit, and then how much of the gin putting in and how much sugar, and we'll be at that stage next. So, and then I'll only, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to boil up the fruit every day in the syrup, and then slowly over 5 or 6 or 7 days, it candies the fruit, and it's delicious. But you don't need to kind of see all those kind of processes, but you will, if I do decide to put some more of the cherry gin in kind of process, we'll kind of see how that works. So, and then if that works with that one, then we'll do the same with that one, but that's slightly nicer tasting, and so we'll just kind of see how they turn out. So, as always, thinking my way through things as I go along. So, we'll drain off, we'll weigh, and then we'll get an idea of how much of the cherry gin we're going to use, and how much of the cherries weighs, and how much sugar we're going to put in. It's equal quantities of liquid and sugar. But that makes pretty much sense. But we'll see. The recipes will be in description and all that kind of stuff. And I'll put some timestamps in as well. And you can just kind of fast forward to the bits that are interesting, if you're interested at all. I am. You may not be. Right. We have drained the cherries, and we have 1.2 litres of the sour cherry gin, and we have got 1,088 grams worth of the sour cherries, and then we've got 900 millilitres of the fresh cherry gin, and we've got 900 grams worth of cherries. So the fresh cherry gin isn't as nice, so we'll use that as the liquid to do the cherries. I'm not really going to drink that, so we'll use that as the liquid and add sugar to that to then cook the cherries and candied cherries, and see if we can kind of get rid of that kind of like flavour of not particularly very nice. It's drinkable, it's just not delicious. That's delicious. So what we'll use is the frozen juice that we got from the frozen cherries, and we'll make we'll make a syrup with some of that, and then we'll add sugar to that, and then we'll top up with the cherry juice, so we're not kind of wasting that, but we still want that taste of the gin to be in the cherries. So we'll use like half that, so we'll use 500 millilitres of the sour cherry gin, and add 500 grams worth of sugar. That should be probably enough to kind of do it. What you do for the sake of ease is you boil the liquid first and then add the sugar to it. It takes longer if you add the sugar to the cold liquid and heat it all up, and it takes longer and therefore you evaporate off more liquid. So you're best off boiling the liquid first, then adding the sugar to it, stirring it around, then put the cherries in. And then when we need to add a little bit more sugar and a little bit more liquid, I will use the juice that I got from the frozen sour cherries, and then we'll do the same with this. So like half the liquid, 500 grams, 500 grams of sugar, 500 milliliters of liquid, and then when we need to top up with liquid and sugar for those cherries, we'll use that gin, because it's just not as nice. I don't know. It's just not as nice as that. So I'd rather drink that than that. So there we go. You don't need to see that process. It's just a simple case of making a syrup, adding the fruit to it, bring it up to the boil, simmering for 5 minutes, let it cool down overnight, and the next day repeat the process. Bring it up to the boil, simmer it for 5 minutes, let it cool down. It takes about 7 days to do it. You can speed up the process kind of quite quickly by as soon as the cherries are cold, or the fruit that you're candying is cold, and then you just simply reboil it, simmer it for 5 minutes, let it go cold. And you speed up that process again by putting the pan in a bowl of cold water to kind of cool it down quicker. You have to boil it up more times, but you can get it done in about a day and a half, something like that, rather than just having to reboil it every day. But anyway, that's what we'll do, and then we'll kind of see what how it turns out, and if it's kind of worth actually turning the gin cherries into candied cherries, if it's kind of worth it. That's what I'm curious about, and if it makes it a nice kind of cocktail cherry. But we'll see in 7 days time. We'll see how it turns out. So they've had about a week, so boiled them up about 7 times, I think. It seemed to take longer than usual. They've worked out well. We've lost a lot of volume. Taste wise, I suppose, well, I will weigh them. I've had some thoughts about them. So the fresh cherries in the gin they've lost that. I don't think the fresh cherries in the gin was very nice. I don't think it was very nice. I've got some of the cherry gin left. It's not that nice. Not compared to the sour cherry gin, but we've kind of lost that not particularly nice flavour through cooking in sugar. So I'm just going to use those as candied cherries, and I'll put them in cakes and things. I'm not going to give them away or anything like that. I'm just going to. I just don't think it's worth it. I just don't think fresh cherries in gin is worth it. If you're going to do anything with cherries, you should just candy them in sugar and water. Unfortunately, and that cherry gin's not. I'll drink it, but it won't be kind of like my first kind of choice. I'll drink it in the thought of I don't want to waste it. I'm not going to throw it away. So I'll put it with something else. It might be nice in some prosecco, some cava, or something like that. But that one's not so good. Now these sour cherry ones are much nicer. Like that. So they've come candied. Got a nice shape to them. So I think putting them in the alcohol beforehand has firm them up a little bit, so they've survived the sugar. We're cooking the sugar process. And because I'm just washing my hands. And because they're sour, got much more interesting flavour. And the gin's nicer. So if you're going to make cherry gin, I'd use frozen sour cherries. They've lost the flavour of the gin though. So actually, let's get this out. These are the buy from the well, these from Lidl, I don't know. The Italian sour cherries and syrup. So I suppose I feel like I want to sneeze. These are better shape, obviously. So how do they taste compared? Those bought ones are lovely. They've got a crunch to them, so maybe they pick them when they're just not quite ripe. Mine are fudgy, more fudgy. I think. What we're going to do. Right, well, we'll kind of see what. I've eaten a few out of there, but we'll see what kind of yield we get. We'll weigh them, and we'll get a yield, and what kind of volume that we get out of it. I'll heat it up, and then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of that cherry gin back to some of that, and put that one in a separate jar. And then I think that would be kind of quite nice, because we've lost, through the cooking process, we've lost the alcohol. But it'd be kind of quite nice to put some of that alcohol back in the cherries. I mean, it's thick enough. Syrup's thick enough that we could put maybe like a tablespoon, so it's nice thick. For a jar, I've got the right size jar out. Yes. So I think for that kind of size jar, which is a standard jam jar size, about 300 and I've got one. What are they? No, about 400 grams. About a 400 gram jar. I think it'd like a tablespoon worth of whatever that is. I'm not mixing up my weights and measures, but like maybe a tablespoon worth of sour gin, the sour cherry gin back in there would be kind of quite nice. So I'll heat some stuff up and we'll weigh it. We'll see what kind of ratio of cherries and all that kind of stuff, and then kind of see what we've got. And then we've got like a proper recipe, haven't we? Well, it won't be a proper recipe because I've eaten some of the cherries out of this as I've done them. I've had at least 7 out of each. So, but anyway, we'll measure up, put in some jars, we'll see what we get, and see how we go. Right. So, summing up, we've put them in jars and things. We've got, I'll write down a bit of paper, the fresh cherries. We've ended up with 1,150 grams worth of cherries in the syrup. That's quite come down quite a bit, hasn't it? Can't remember how much. I'll work out how much sugar I put in, and I'll put it in the description. And then with the sour cherries, we've got 1,760 grams worth of cherries in syrup. So kind of a bad result from the from the sour cherries. That might be down to the liquid that we took out of them. So they were frozen, defrosted them, and then strained off that extra liquid. So essentially there will have been more cherries than actually in the sour cherries ones. The number of cherries will be higher than the fresh cherries, because weight-wise they were about the same. So that's probably just down to the sheer number of cherries, because of the liquid that came out of them. Therefore, they weighed. There was more. Damn it! Yeah, I don't know how I can't describe that any better. What I have done is those are the ones, and they've just got the syrup in, and this is the one that I put some of the cherry gin back into it. So I'm just curious to kind of taste it, and now I'm kind of quite curious to kind of think maybe that we don't actually have to macerate the cherries in the gin. We could just do the candied cherries and then add some alcohol to it once we're at this stage. So swap out some of this syrup for the for some alcohol, and then kind of let it sit in the cupboard in the alcohol and the syrup. And I kind of think that would probably be a better way of doing things, because you wouldn't have to faff around making a cherry gin beforehand. Interesting. So anyway, in that jar, that's about a 400 gram jar, and I put in 20 grams worth of the cherry gin. So it's just not as thick, and it's got a better consistency. It's more like the consistency of those bought cherries. Well, let's just have a look at that. So I think that's what I'll do in future. So let me just taste one. That's nice of putting the cherry gin in. So I've got to do another batch. Yeah, so I'm going to do another batch. I didn't have enough big pans, so I've got another batch of the cherry gin to kind of do. So I think what I'll do is I will not make a syrup out of the gin. I will use the cherry juice. I've still got some cherry juice in the freezer. So cherry juice and the syrup and sugar to make syrup, and then I get a better yield from that, I think. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. So I will take the liquid out of that, use that as cherry gin, and then make a syrup from the cherry juice that I've got in the freezer, which came from these cherries. Add that to sugar, and then cook the cherries that way, and then add some of the cherry gin back into it that way, and then I'm not wasting the cherry gin unnecessarily. So I don't think kind of using the syrup to make the cherry gin is kind of worth it. In fairness, I don't think turning fresh cherries into cherry gin is worth it. I don't think it tastes particularly very nice. I think frozen sour cherries are the way to go. But obviously I'll do something with that. That will, it'll go in my Christmas cakes. I'll go into fruit cakes or something. I'm not going to waste it. It's not that horrible that I wouldn't want to throw them away or not drink the alcohol. But I'll do something else with the alcohol. But there we go. So yeah, so there'll be a little bit at the end of this, and we'll do a taste test between those cherries that I cooked in the cherry gin and added sugar to, and the next batch of cherries that I'm just going to cook in cherry juice and sugar, and then add some of the gin afterwards, because I don't think it kind of improves it that much that it's worth wasting the cherry gin when we could do something else with the cherry gin. Yes, I think that makes sense to me. So there'll be a bit more to tack onto in this video, but it's not worth doing fresh cherries. Use the frozen sour cherries if you can get them to make cherry gin, and then drink the cherry gin, and then take the cherries and candy them, and then you get like 2 bites of cherry, don't you? Hey, 2 bites of cherry. Right, so we've done more cherries, just using the juice and sugar to candy them, and I need two. I'm going to do it 2 ways. For a comparison, we're going to do one with gin. I suppose like rum or whiskey would be better, but I've got gin in the house, and I'm not going to use that whiskey that I've got. So we said a tablespoon, didn't we? So about 20 grams from what I remember. And then we've got the cherry gin, and then this will let us know if we can macerate the cherries in the sugar and the gin, and then cherries out, candy them, save the gin, string, and then add a little bit of the gin so we don't kind of waste the cherry gin. So we get like 2 bites of the cherry. So stir that one in there, and then we'll add a little bit more, and then we'll leave them overnight to cool, and then we'll compare them to the other cherries that we've got. So I need a bit more in, but get the idea. So remember, that's the cherry gin, and that's just the plain gin. So jar them up, and we'll see what the others they taste like in the morning compared to the others. So just so we've got a little bit of time to the alcohol to get into the fruit and that type of thing. Right, so we have the 4 different types of candied cherries. Let's go and rattle back through them. So these two were the ones where I took the alcohol off the cherries and then just made the syrup with some of the cherry juice, not the cherry alcohol, and some sugar, and then I put in gin in that one, and I put in back in some of the cherry gin into that one. These were a batch that I cooked. I used some of the cherry gin as part of the syrup to make the cherries, and then I added more cherry gin back into that one, and that one's just the cherries cooked in the cherry gin syrup. So I think they're all going to be nice because they're all the sour cherry gins, which was the nicer of the gins. So this is just really kind of like figuring out how we get, third time I'm going to say this joke, 2 bites of the cherry. So we're going to get to how turn the cherry into the gin and the cherries and the sugar into a cherry gin. So we're going to get to drink the gin, and then we're going to get to do something with the cherries, either use them in some baking or some candy them, that type of thing. So I think probably the best route would be to, I'm going to say it now, I think the best thing to do would be to add the cherries to the gin and the sugar, let that macerate. No, it macerates just sugar, but let that turn into cherry gin for a couple of months, then drain off the cherry gin, keep the cherry gin, and then use the juice that came out of the frozen cherries and some sugar to make the syrup. And then once you've made the candied cherries, then add some of the cherry gin back to it, and then you've got the alcohol kind of taste, and you haven't evaporated it off through the candying process. So let's taste. So this is the one made with the first one I pulled out, it's got a stone in it. Nice. Very nice. Nice there. So that was the one we put some cherry gin back in at the very end and didn't cook it, so we were left with the flavour of the alcohol. I think this is going to be the best one for overall results. Let's get the cherry out. Well, that's delicious. And this was one that I just put some gin in. Yeah, they're all nice. But so summing up, if you want to do candied cherries and don't want to have to make some cherry gin, what you can do is you can take some frozen sour cherries, defrost them, drain off the liquid, and then use that liquid and an equal quantity of sugar to make a syrup, and then to cook the cherries in that and candy those. Then what you can do is you can add some alcohol of your choice. Once you've candied the cherries, which takes about 7 days or 7 boilings, you could then add the alcohol of your choice to those cherries, and you will get a alcoholic-ish candied cherry. Make them, put them in the jar with a little bit of alcohol, about 20 grams per 400 grams worth of cherries. That sounds about right. 400 grams worth of candied cherries. And so you can do that, so you don't have to make your own cherry gin, you don't have to marinate the cherries in gin beforehand. However, so that's that one. So you could use rum, you could use whiskey, you could use gin. Bit of vermouth would be nice. Bit of vermouth would make those, or you could even some red wine. Yeah, so kind of like make your syrup with some of the juice and some red wine, and then add a little bit of red wine in at the end as well. So that works. You can do that. You don't have to faff around and make your own cherry gin. The best thing to do, if you want to drink the gin, is to marinate the cherries in the gin and the sugar, drain it off, use the juice that you got from the frozen cherries to make a syrup with some sugar, cook the cherries in that, and then add a little bit of the cherry gin back to it at the very end, and then you get like a very nice cherries. Or if you're not that bothered about drinking the gin, you can then use the gin to make the gin and sugar to make the syrup to cook the cherries in to make candied cherries. So there we go. It works. And if you don't want to, and you can just do it without adding the gin back. So it works in every kind of method. However you want to kind of do it, it works. You can make it as easy or as difficult as you kind of like. And if you want to make the cherry gin and you want to drink the cherry gin, you don't have to use it to make the candied cherries. Does that make sense? Hopefully. It makes sense to me. So it makes sense to me. So they all work. And very nice. I'd use frozen sour cherries. I wouldn't use fresh cherries. I don't think they're very nice. I don't think they make a particularly very nice alcohol. But we could take some fresh cherries, pit them, and then candy those cherries with equal quantities of sugar and water, because we won't have any juice to come out of those cherries. Could make them candy those cherries that way, and then once they are candied, when you're going to put them in the jar, you could put in, for every jar worth of candied cherries, you could put in 20 grams worth of your chosen alcohol, and then leave them to put the lid on, leave it to marinate for a couple of months in the cupboard, and you would have delicious cherries. So there we go. Different ways of doing candied cherries with a little bit of alcohol. A success? I think so.